Gasless Mig Welders have been around for quite some time now, and you can pick up a small little machine like this at your local hardware store, or you maybe like online on eBay is a great place to look. eBay, Amazon, those kind of online retail outlets. Quite often you'll pick up these small machines significantly cheaper online as compared to like downtown in a physical retail shop, just because they are a bit of a bulky item and they can be quite heavy. So just keep an eye on the shipping and handling charges. I mean, some people like to screw you on that as well, but just keep an eye on those shipping and handling charges. It might just be better off for the extra 20 or 30 bucks it's going to cost in town to maybe physically drive down there and pick one up yourself. So there might not be any cost saving buying one of these machines online as opposed to in person. So in this video I'm going to go over the basics. Maybe you've never used a gasless MIG welder before, maybe you're looking at buying one, you want to have an extra tool in the shed. And these things are great. I mean, this is only a small machine, don't go expecting miracles from it. It's only rated at 88 amps. And that's enough power there to do all your small DIY type welding tasks. I mean, like making up a small box trailer or repairs, you can do that. You can use it. This is actually a dual machine, so it can not only run the gasless MIG wire, but it's also got plumbing and hoses at the back here, so you can use solid MIG wire with a shielding gas, which makes this machine a lot more versatile for people who plan on like doing car body work repairs on the thin sheet metal, because gasless MIG wire isn't really that crash hot for your thin gauge material kind of work. Very spattery and it burns a bit hotter. And using a solid MIG wire with a shielding gas is going to be better suited to those applications. So I'll take you around this machine and just show you the basics of what they are, because you may never use one before. You might need to know, hey, listen, I want to buy one of these machines. What do I look out for? What are the controls? How do we set one of these things up? And that's what this video is about. It's about showing you guys what a gasless MIG welder is. Now, this particular machine is a single-phase machine. It's only a very simple, small machine, and you only need single-phase power. Now, one thing I will say is that this requires a 15-amp plug. Now, I'm from Australia, and this is one of the Australian plugs, and you can see here that this earth lug is a lot wider and taller. It's just bigger than what a standard 10-amp plug would look like. So on your wall behind you, where your outlet would be, not that I've got one here, but say your most common household outlet is a 10-amp socket, right? So this fella here won't physically plug into a 10-amp socket because the little earth slot on the 10-amp sockets are too small to fit the earth lug in on this machine here. So you're going to need to either have a dedicated 15-amp socket for you to use one of these machines. Now, not all machines will come with a 15-amp connection. Some might only need a 10-amp connection. So that's one thing to be aware of. Now, this machine is a 240-volt machine. If you're from somewhere like the United States, maybe even like Europe, England way sort of thing. See, all power in Australia for single phase is 240 volts. Now, you quite often read online that people in the USA and that have the option of choosing a 110 or 115 volt welding machine, or like a 220 volt machine. It's easier for us in Australia because you've got just 240 volts, bang, that's it. But generally speaking, if you're tossing up, deciding between like a 110 volt, 115 volt machine or a 220 volt machine, it's a simple question: is if you're doing heavier welding, well, get the heavier machine, and it's as simple as that. Now, any MIG welding machine, whether it's a dedicated gasless MIG welder or whatever, every MIG welding machine has what's called a MIG welding gun. A MIG welding gun is what makes a MIG a MIG. Without the MIG welding gun, you've got nothing really. Now, this is just a torch which is specifically designed for this particular machine. Now, this fitting here, on an industrial machine, you'd have like a Euro fitting, or that's the most common fitting these days. It's called a Euro fitting, and it sort of screws on. You can disconnect the torch away from the machine. Because this is just a cheap little machine, it's just a proprietary torch made in the manufacturer, like in the factory sort of thing. So the downside to that, it might be hard getting parts if there's any parts available at all. But any MIG welding machine is basically the same in theory and in operation. Quality is a different thing. So you've got a trigger, pull the trigger, the wire comes out and the power flows through, you know, along the cable to the welding electrode, and you can start the weld. So here's our MIG welding gun, and we can see this is our nozzle or our shroud, which goes over the end here. It slides on there. And you give it a bit of a twist, and you can see it sits in there centrally, and you can see the welding wire, and inside that is the contact tip. Now, on here, let's see, we've got the MIG wire there itself, which comes out last. We have what's called a contact tip. Now, the contact tip you can unscrew with a pair of pliers, and it'll unscrew off. And then you have your tip holder slash gas diffuser. There's a couple of holes here where the gas would come out. And there's this little spirally spring here, and its job is just to apply a bit of pressure, so when you stick this nozzle on, it doesn't fall off and flop around silly. Now all these parts are called consumables. Like this nozzle, that's a consumable because it gets consumed over time. It just gets dirty and shitty and gets all knocked up and that, and they have to be cleaned out a few times and then thrown away. Well, your MIG wires are consumable because it physically gets burnt as you're welding with it, so it's consumed as you go. The contact tip, they tend to get blocked and dirty, and you get burnbacks and all that kind of gear, and they tend to, I mean, depending on how your machine's running, you can go through like half a dozen a day, or you can get one tip to last you, a month or so. But they're a consumable as well. And even this part here, the tip holder and diffuser, that's a consumable because it over time does need to be replaced, although I mean, your contact tips and your nozzles and your wire are the most commonly replaced items. Now this here is the earth clamp. Each and every gasless MIG welder, MIG welding machine, TIG welder, any welding machine needs to have an earth connection. And whether it's a physical clamp type job where you clamp it onto your work table like this or to your work piece, or whether it's bolted down, or a G-clamp type clamp, or even a magnetic clamp, you still need to have an earth clamp. It's a good idea to keep an eye on the contacts of these, because over time, and I've just noticed this as well, two things, and this is a brand new machine mind you, is one which is very common, is you'll see in here on the actual contacts there, they get corroded and pitted, and over time, you know, when you go to make a contact with your job, it may not contact properly, and you don't get a proper electrical transfer and circuit. So it's always a good idea to sometimes hit them down with a file or a bit of sandpaper to make sure they're clean. Make sure these lugs and these nuts are tightened up. Get this, like I said before, brand new machine, only been used once or twice, and look at this, coming off already. Look at that, that's disgusting, pathetic. Look at that. It's not even attached properly. I guess that's one of the issues you have with these small, cheap machines. You know, you get what you pay for, sort of thing. I mean, hey, it's nothing hard to fix. I mean, all I'm going to have to do is undo this nut here undo that nut there, and clamp it back down underneath. But I mean, this is a brand new machine. You know, imagine the dramas you could have with the earth clamps if it was a second-hand machine. So that's a good thing to be aware of.